Today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners, who for more than 25 years have successfully delivered interim and permanent leadership talent to transform businesses. To hire the talent you need to enable your business to thrive, visit www.progressotalent.com today. Hey, Extrology listeners. Just before we get into today's episode, a warning in advance that this podcast contains discussions around the topic of suicide, drug use, gambling, alcohol abuse, and prison. So if for any reason that proves a difficult subject to listen to, just wanted to give you all the heads up that those are all topics that are included in today's episode. So many of us have lost track of our sense of freedom and passion for adventure, succumbing to the pressures of modern life. We should never let go of our dreams and always strive to gain new experiences and enjoy life for everything it has to offer. This is a quote from today's Extrology guest, David Haze. Drug addiction, alcoholism, crime and time in prison took David to rock bottom, and a realisation that he was distracted from his true values and that which made him come alive. He is now on a journey of self-discovery, on a quest to take his love for adventure and bringing people together with the aim to inspire and motivate, for people to come alive and take that step into the unknown, to truly live through adventure, no matter how big or small. It's a journey of self-discovery and adventure that has seen him smash 7 stand-up paddleboarding world records. He is about to launch Europe's Untamed Beasts, a first-of-its-kind stand-up paddleboarding adventure. He's also attempting to be the first person to stand up paddleboard the River Nile and the formidable Skeleton Coast. So what's the story behind the story? Without further ado, let's get into it. David Haze, welcome to the Extrology podcast. Great to have you here in person as my guest. And I think it's been too long that whilst the virtues of face-to-face as we've online, as I said, have been much discussed, it's great to be back to doing things in person again. I think there's much to be gained from it. So as is customary with all Extrology guests, we like to start with a bit of background, start with the early days. So before we bring it up to speed with more recent events and where you're at today, where did you grow up? What was childhood like for you?
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you for having me come in. And as you said, it is great to do this face-to-face. It's, it's 2 years we haven't been doing anything like this, so it's nice actually to get out and do this. But yeah, for me, growing up, so, I mean, I haven't been given the worst cards in life. I haven't been dealt the best cards in life. My father died before I was born. I ended up going to military boarding school from the age from 6 to 18. And for me, the emphasis on adventure was really put on you when I was at military boarding school. And we used to get camouflage gear from, our friends, parents. We'd disappear into the woods. And then when we were meant to be coming in for bedtime, we'd have the school teachers sort of chasing us. So for me, boarding school is where I grew up. It was more around, my friends, and the teachers became my family, not my real family. I didn't really become that close to my family until my older life, until I sort of left boarding school. Came across a few troubles in my life, and that's where me and my family really bonded.
See, when you say military boarding school, so not to make any assumption, but as I would understand it, that would therefore be, it's a school for those that have some kind of military family where, as a consequence of that military service, they're travelling all over the world, being posted to all 4 corners. You've got that stability and that spot that provides you a home in inverted commas, that you're a regular base, if you like, whilst family members are doing their thing for Queen and country.
It is, yeah, no, it is. But they were really strict as well.
Really?
I mean, at 6 years old, we had to make our bed, stand at the end of the bed before breakfast, and the teacher would come and check the bed. If it's not made, then obviously they strip it back and then off you go again. I mean, I'm 6 years old at this point. It's weird to think, my nephew now, who's 10 years old, it was weird to think about him making his own bed. The fuss that he would kick off, he would kick off if he had to make his own bed. But there I was, 6 years old, stand at the end of my bed. And then in the evening, we used to have to do certain exercises as well, a lot of running and everything. But one thing about boarding school is so good at giving you opportunities. They see your potential. They really try to push you. But something that I now know, looking back at everything, is they never taught me how to deal with failure. And it wasn't until I got a bit older that I came across my first failure that I just didn't know how to control this anymore, how to deal with this.
So what do you think, if you took the pluses from that education and experience, what do you think you gained from it? What were the upsides for you?
They gave me a real zest for life. They really gave me lots of opportunities. A lot of doors opened for me. So from boarding school, I went to university. I moved to London. I became a Forex trader, and the education-wise, it's small classes. They really push it on you and they really can focus on you and train you up to deal with life. But it was that whole failure. I wished at some point in my life I had, someone taught me about failure. Maybe not having a father around, maybe you fall over, you hurt yourself, him coming along and teach me about life. And maybe that's what I miss. Is it a boarding school thing? Is it me not having a father? But I always wish that there was more emphasis on failure. And like looking back at failure now, it's not a bad thing, failure. Just because you failed doesn't make you a failure. You're somebody who has failed. And it's such a great tool for growth and change. And that's what I now see failure as. But I just wish that, I could have seen that a long time ago.
Clearly, adventure plays a big part in your life now, and we're going to talk about that in some detail. But was there a time you recall as you look back where you first felt, this is, that real buzz that you'd gotten out of that first event? Was the first experience that you could describe?
Yeah, I mean, it's going back to that boarding school, that military boarding school. So it was in the middle of Surrey, right out in the countryside. There's woods around us, and we would just go out the school bounds. We shouldn't have done it, but we'd go and play in the woods, and it's just that little buzz. First off, we're out the school bounds. That's quite exciting, and we'd have this military gear, so we'd put all this camo paint on us. We'd wear this camo gear, and we'd just go and play army men in the woods, and that's where this real thirst for adventure came from. I absolutely loved every moment of it. And I just loved those weekends when they would come around and me and my friends would just disappear into the woods and just build dens and climb trees and everything. And I just absolutely loved it.
And so you moved on to university. What did you study at university?
So popular music and record production and radio production as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where had that interest stem from?
So from 15, I started playing music, guitar and piano, and I absolutely loved music. And then I studied music at college, and then from there I went to university, studied music at university. And, it was going well. I started working in radio. I started my own online radio station. And eventually I moved to London for an ex-girlfriend, and then I couldn't carry on my online radio station, so I ended up selling that. And I just happened to fall into finance. So I became a Forex broker, got my licenses.
There wasn't a kind of, this is the path I'm going to follow. I'm going to be a Forex. You go from radio to Forex trader. It's quite a shift.
Well, yeah. So I'm in London, and I couldn't do the radio anymore. So I saw that it was getting too much to also try and do a proper job as well. So I ended up selling that, and I wasn't doing radio anymore. So the job my girlfriend at the time, she worked for QVC, the shopping channel. So she was working there, and I was just trying to find a job. I was doing bits and bobs there, and eventually this broker job came on. My brother works in finance, and I read loads of books about, the finance industry. And there's one book by Ben Mesrich called Rigged, about a guy who starts the Dubai Stock Exchange. And I really liked that. And it sort of got me really interested. So I started following on the markets, and an opportunity came up to be a broker. So I thought, I'm going to give that a go. So I started broking foreign money, did my licenses, and then I started trading it. And I was doing really well. And then suddenly me and my boss fell out. I wasn't doing things her way. And that was my first biggest failure when I got fired. I just didn't know how to handle that.
It's a brutal business, right? And I think probably, so what sort of time, give us a sense of timescale for context. What sort of year are you talking about here?
So this must have been, so when I got fired, it must have been 2013, I think it was.
Okay. So I think probably it's always been a brutal world, and arguably that world of finance, that sort of hire and fire, still applies today. I'm not sure, but it's probably, I wouldn't say it's gotten any easier, but it's probably gotten a bit more empathetic, I suspect, as to to people's plights. But how do you remember how you felt? Can you remember the emotions you were going through when, as you say, it's your first significant experience of what you're perceiving as failure at that point? How did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, my life was going at 100 miles an hour. I'm earning some good money. I'm going out to all these restaurants. I'm spending a lot of money, living like the London life. Like everybody, when you move to London, I was living that life people wish that they could live. I mean, looking back at it now, that wasn't who I was. I just lost touch with who I was. But then suddenly, the carpet was pulled from underneath me. The wind was taking out my sails. And then I was like, I've done so well for myself to get to this point, but I sort of did this all on my own. My family were proud of me. My girlfriend was proud of me at the time. And suddenly it's all disappeared. And I was just too proud. And I think as men, we seem to do this a lot, that we just don't ask for help. And like, I just tried to deal with this all on my own. So I turned to gambling, spent a lot of money on gambling. Through that, I ended up using a lot of drugs. That all spiraled out of control. The drink got really heavy. And my life was just going down the drain so quickly and quickly and quickly that eventually that, you know, I had turned to crime.
I mean, it must have been an incredibly, you look back, an incredibly fraught time, and all credit you for talking about it. But can you remember, so it's gambling first. Was that the first sort of sense that you got that things, you were turning down a path perhaps that was going to be leading to some destruction?
Yeah, so I mean, I pretended to go to work. Like the girlfriend at the time I was with, I was pretending I was going to work, so I would disappear. I mean, she worked shift patterns, so I could sort of leave for a few hours and come home. But in those few hours that I was trying to look for work, but I also needed to get money, so it looked like our bank account wasn't going down very quickly. And then in those hours, I ended up going to like the bookies, I ended up going to the casinos and start spending money. And then that one time you have a big win, you think, oh, okay, you can do this. But you know, I can tell you something, that you'll never win bet at gambling. It doesn't happen. The house does always win. And there's that saying for a reason, because it does.
And what sort of timescales, pardon the descent that you found yourself, the tumble you're on, how quickly do you think you thought, I might be in trouble here?
It's a funny one, really. So it was sort of a year all spiraled out of control. I mean, there was, you know, recreational cocaine use when I was working in the city. And then I started using it more and more because it numbed my pain. It made me forget about things. Like, it's weird. On a weekend when I was with the girlfriend at the time, like, I didn't crave it. I know I was probably addicted, but I didn't crave it. It's weird to explain, but I used to just take it to numb my pain. So I ended up moving some stolen goods, and I got caught for that. And eventually I got arrested, and they were saying, you're going to go to prison, you're going to go to prison. I had this court date looming over me for another year. In that year, so there was a year where it all went wrong, and then there was another year where I got back on track. I ended up becoming a business development director for another Forex firm. Life was great again, earning some good money, but I was being told that I was going to jail. My drug use continued, and I was hiding this big secret. I didn't tell anybody that.
Not a soul? Not
a soul. Nobody knew anything. So I had all this pressure on me, and that day I was meant to go to court, I just sort of cracked. It's like a mental breakdown, I suppose, and I just disappeared for 5 weeks, just gone. Tried to take my life twice, and then turned to some more serious crime, which then resulted in my prison sentence.
Goodness. And so with respect to, you mentioned the cocaine use, that you didn't crave it, but that you were using it to numb your pain at the time. Did you seek a bet? Was that a real lure for you? Was there that drive, that sort of pulling you in, that sense of, you know, I need to bet, I need to gamble today?
There was the need to try and earn money, but those times that I did win big, well, I say big, it wasn't massive, but you'd win, there was that buzz, like, oh my God, this is good, I can do this. You know, I'm convincing myself that actually you can make a living with this, I can hide all of this, I can get my life back on track. But it's just not the case. It really isn't the case. But, you know, once I got this new job, I stopped the gambling, but the drug use continued, because I still had this looming court date over my head, and I was told I'm going to prison. I didn't know anybody that's been to prison. I don't have any friends that have come from that sort of walk of life, anything. This was a whole new world. Because I was keeping it to myself, I had nobody to talk to. I didn't know what to do. I mean, these police were bullying me, basically, and threatening me that you're going to jail. I thought, this is the end of my life. What do I do? So there was a point at which you started to fix things, get things back on track. You mentioned you got another job, good job, business development director of another Forex firm. Was there a sense of, albeit short period of a sense of relief, a sense of things that, or maybe things are turning around, maybe actually I could put my life back on track? Was there a sense of that at any point once you secured that role? Yeah, I think so, definitely, because I was thinking, now my life is back on track. Maybe if I go into court for this court date, you know, maybe I can explain the whole situation. What the stolen goods I moved, it wasn't the stolen goods, and I don't condone anything I've done. It was about £1,500 worth of stolen goods. It turns out I wouldn't have gone to jail. So eventually when I did get caught and I was sentenced for that, it wasn't a prison sentence. And I wish somebody was there to talk to me and help me with this. But I was thinking, if I go in front of a court, I've got this new job, I'm earning good money, I can give something back. All the money I'm earning, I can pay back what I've done, and I can donate certain money or do something to try and make life better. But I think taking me away would have just made things worse. But I didn't realise that I didn't really take control of my own mental health. I think that was the big thing. And the drug use just really wasn't helping.
Were you drinking as well heavily at this point? Do you think you...
Yes, yeah, no, I was.
And had the gambling stopped, or
there was the odd flutter here and there.
Yeah.
Because I think it was still trying to chase that buzz. Once you had a few drinks of me and a bit of cocaine, I thought, I'll just go and give it a little go. I got some money at the bank, so at the end of the day, it's not the worst thing. But it was sort of the drinking. It wasn't drinking on my own. It was when I was out, it was excessive, and I was out a lot.
And I guess just trying to escape, trying to numb the pain, trying to get away from this huge pressure that you would have been feeling. A kind of sword of Damocles is heading far. Do you remember that court case, how you felt when the verdict was handed down? Were you in court thinking, I'm going to prison? Was there a point in which you thought, hang on a minute, I'm not? That's actually, things might be all right. I could this path, if you like, business development, director, new job, things are turning. I'm not going to prison. Ooh, is there a chance I could you have stopped at that point and drawn a line in the sand, do you think?
Well, when I actually did so I disappeared for the 5 weeks.
Of course, yes.
So in those 5 weeks, I committed more crimes. So even though when I was found, I got sentenced for that, when the police arrested me again, they sort of knew something else was going. So even though, yes, I got the verdict, life is great, you're not going to jail, I knew that there's something more serious coming. There's a big storm coming. And my family, again, didn't know what happened in those 5 weeks. They knew a bit. They knew about me taking my life. They knew all of this. But the huge storm that was, brewing, they didn't know about this yet. And then eventually, it was about 6 weeks later. I remember it was in June. And I'd had a really nice dinner with my mum. We sat outside, my mum and my mum's partner. We're having a fire. Lovely, lovely afternoon. I had to go and answer a police bell, which, again, they didn't know about. And then that was it, gone. And I was gone for 1 year and 6 months. And my mum was like, it's like you just died. You were just taken away from us. We had this lovely evening. You've gone to London, and then you never came home until a year and a half later.
How did you feel sat there with your mum that evening knowing this was coming?
I didn't think that next day that I was going to get remanded and go to prison. Right. So I thought I'm answering a police bell, a few more questions. I didn't know how much they knew. I didn't know what's going on. So I went, and that was it, gone. So then it was that phone call from the police station to my mum saying, just come clean, tell her everything.
We'll come back to that in due course. So talk to me about that 5 weeks. So where did you take yourself? Where did you go? Yeah,
so I lived in London. I came back home. I went down as Ham Common, around the area where we live. I went there, that's where I knew, and that's where I sort of tried to take my life. It's all my fond memories growing up as a child. And I went back there and tried to take my life there. Wasn't successful. I spent a few days, and I went to the New Forest, tried again. Wasn't successful, thank God. Somebody was looking over me. And I just then went to Surrey, just sort of a lost man, and saw an opportunity, ended up breaking into a house, ended up turning to burglary. And there's no one in the house. I didn't hurt anyone, nothing like that. Still don't condone it. But yeah, and I just did it as a way to survive, to get some money, and sort of just go from the day to day to try and live and figure out what to do.
So you were drifting on your own at this point?
Drifting, that's the one, yeah. Yeah, on my own. Again, just nobody knew anything. Well, I didn't speak to anybody, everyone just assumed I disappeared. And in those 5 weeks when I lost myself, I just assumed, everybody's wiped me out, they don't care about me anymore. But that's not the case.
Was it the word that springs to mind, and I, again, ought not to make any assumptions, but a sense of shame that was driving some of those behaviours?
Was that all shame, yeah. All shame. That's why I think I'd partly trying to take my life. I've got so low in depression, I tried to take my life, but there's also that shame just sitting over me. I couldn't face the world again. I've done so well, I've gone as this Forex trader in London, earned some great money, and suddenly right down to the bottom. It was, weird.
And no one, you weren't able, and I know that oftentimes it's not the case, that you would naturally seek support. You always get to a point, I suspect, whereby you think, well, no one can help me anyway. But you weren't able to get sort of medical help or help from a psychological perspective with your mental health? And there was no, you couldn't see a way out.
Yeah. I was just stuck in this hole and just couldn't see a way of climbing out. Just going deeper and deeper into this hole and never taking a breather, I suppose, never living in that moment, trying to figure life out, like taking a step back and gone, what's it like? What do I do now? How do I do this? And something that I've learned now is, one of the bravest things you can do in this life, and one of the scariest things you can do, is just ask for help. Such a simple little act, and it can change your life completely. I mean, still to this day, like if I need help, I ask for help. Like, it's just so weird to see the man I am now to that man I was then. It's crazy.
So you are here today, which is fabulous. And it sounds incredibly condescending to say, well done you, but it's great that you are.
Yeah.
What was the trigger? What was the change? What was the point at which, do you reflect back and think there was a moment? Was there a moment where you thought, you know what, I am going to turn this around. I can turn this around. I want to turn. What was the process?
Yeah, so I came out of prison and I was so focused on getting my life back on track. I was so focused on earning money again. I was so focused on getting my own place to live that I'd never spent any time to focus on me and figure out who I was. So I came out of prison, started my own business, earned some good money again, got into a toxic relationship. That spiraled out of control. The drug use came back in. I spent all my company's money. Debt collectors started coming in, all these debts building up, and it just spiraled out of control. And it's like, what do I do now? Unfortunately, I turned back to the crime. And again, I got arrested. This time it was 5 years, 4 months. You serve half. And I remember in that cell, like, I was such a broken man, like so broken, more broken than I was last time. Like, I didn't try to take my life, but I was a shell of a man I once was. And I was just thinking, like, how have I got to this place? Like, as I said from the start, I've been given the worst cards in life. I've been given so many opportunities, and here I am serving a second prison sentence. Like, how has this happened? And I just all drifted for the first year in the prison cell, in the prison system. And then one day, I met a woman called Dr. Sarah Lewis, and she was running this sort of yoga circuit training in the gym. And I went and joined it because I started picking up my fitness again. And it just took my mind out of prison. Like, even though my body was there, it took my mind out. And I was just talking to Sarah. I was like, who are you? Like, what are you doing in prison? Why are you spending time? I spent this time with her. She owns a company called Penal Reform Solutions. And I was like, I need to get involved with you. So I started working with her when I was in prison. And she's like, when you get released, you need to come and speak to me. So I ended up getting released, and she's my boss now. Like, I will now work for her as a consultant for the criminal justice system to try and improve the system that is broken.
Goodness, but so, again, I'm interested in the triggers. That so you made a conscious decision to to improve your fitness, to get back into fitness.
Yeah.
Was there a sort of moment where you thought actually, do you know what, I need to, at the very least, I want to get in shape?
So I wanted to get back into shape because I used to love it. And
why? What was the?
So I basically decided to go on this journey of self-discovery. So I started reading all these self-help books and all of this. Start reading all these things. And I was thinking, one of the main things that was missing from my life was adventure. So growing up, I used to play county rugby. I was a tri-county athlete. So I used to be a national champion sailor, surf my university. Sports was a huge part of my life. And going to London, I let go of that person that I was. I let go of all of that. And I was thinking, like, that was something that's who I was. So I got back into all this fitness. I then met Sarah. I kept reading all these self-help books. I then qualified as a life coach inside as well. I came out of a mindfulness-based practice. And one thing that I always used to love before going into prison was paddleboarding. And my mum used to send me paddleboarding books. She used to send me surfing books, magazines, sorry. I used to put them on the wall. So all the lads around me would have pictures of half-naked women on their walls. There'd be me with pictures of paddleboarders and surfers all around these locations in the world. And I remember just thinking, like, when I come out, I'm going to paddleboard the 4 longest lakes in the UK in 4 consecutive days. Like, that's my goal. So I'm starting to come out of this hole now. I've now got a purpose. I've got a vision. I've got something to look forward to when I come out. I still had a year and a half to go. So I met a PT inside. He then put a program to me to train to. So I started training. I was in the gym 10 times a week. And I was like, got this goal. I'm going to do this. I'm going to come out and I'm going to paddleboard these 4 longest lakes. And I remember telling the lads around me, when I'm out, I'm going to paddleboard the 4 longest lakes in the UK. I'm going to set 4 world records. And they used to say to me, no, you're not. Like, you're a prison number. you're always a prison number and you're always going to be a prison number. And in that moment, I realized that prison isn't going to define me. Like, I'm not going to be defined by my mistakes. Like, nobody should ever be defined by your mistakes. And the only one that's in control of our destiny is us. I'm the only one that can control my destiny. If I want to come to prison again, I can do it. If I don't want to come to prison again, I don't have to come to prison again. So that moment they said that to me is that I knew that I'm going to get out into that world and I'm going to just change everything about myself. Like, I'm really going to push myself. And I'm also going to try and highlight the purpose of reform and rehabilitation. I want to show more people that our mistakes don't define who we are. More than that, I just want to try and change perspectives on people like myself that have been to prison. Because most of the people that have gone to prison, like, they didn't wake up and decide to commit a crime. There's a reason behind why we've committed a crime. There's probably like 3% of the people that, decide to commit a crime. The rest of us, there's a reason, and we need to do more. Anyway, I came out of prison and I ended up doing these 4 lakes, which would be an anniversary next week, a year ago.
Tell me about Sarah. So what was it about Sarah that inspired you?
Sarah is probably the most amazing individual you'll ever meet in your life. Like, she's an angel. The thing that really, what it all changed for me is she saw me as an individual. She spoke to me as an individual and a human being. For that to be done in the prison system is a rarity. Like, nobody does that to you. It's like, she just puts all this criminal justice bit aside. For her and for me and for everyone else that I work with, going to prison is having your time taken away, your family time taken away, and that's where the punishment should stop. So Sarah's gone over to Scandinavia. She's seen how the prison system works over there in Norway, and then she tried to bring it. I was in Guy's Marsh in North Dorset, and she tried to bring this program over to the UK. And I tell you what, it really it's changed my life, and she's made a big difference over in North Dorset. So there's about 6 of us that we all met Sarah inside. We're all free men now, and we're all working for her, and we're all sort of, I suppose, thriving in our different areas, which is absolutely amazing.
And do you remember can you reflect back on that first, was it yoga fitness type session you were doing, how you felt at the end of it?
Amazing. So it was just 8 hours of pure fitness.
Really? 8 hours?
8 hours, yeah. I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted, but it was such a good exhaustion.
How early was this into your fitness journey as well? Were you in reasonable shape before you embarked upon it?
Yeah, I think I started getting into it, and that's why I thought, because they basically offered 2. It was 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. I said to the guy that's running it, like, can I just do both sessions and just go for the whole hog? He's like, if you want to. And then, and I just felt just great. And it was that, when I went to bed, I could sleep well, I felt physically fit, and I just knew there's people trying to do something. So from there, I organised the marathon for the prison. I ended up organising all sorts of sporting competitions for the prison to get the lads in, to try and get them to feel what I felt. And it was just amazing. I think sport, the power of sport and the power of adventure is absolutely mind-blowing what can actually do for you.
And what sort of reaction did you, let me ask you, what the reaction was from fellow inmates? What was their response to the sorts of events that you were putting on?
The first thing, when you start doing these things, people, they start calling you, they call it a screw boy.
Right.
Which can get you in a lot of trouble in prison, because they think, you're hanging out with the prison officers and, you're snitching, they call it. But I was like, I'm doing this because it's made me feel amazing, and I want you guys to feel amazing. I want to take you away from prison like it's done for me. Like, you can see me how you want to see me, but I'm doing this for us. I'm not doing it for them. And eventually, people then start to realize, actually, you are doing some good work inside. And then they start getting involved. And then from there, I actually made a position for myself in the prison. So I started writing to companies on the outside. So I started writing to Lush, B&Q, Sainsbury's, Dorset Tea Company. And I started getting them involved with the prison as well. So they would come in and talk to us. And the idea was they would then hire the guys when they get released as well. Like, I just experience this broken system, and I want to try and fix it or help any way I can. So when I've come out, I started raising money for the Alliance of Sport, who use the power of sport in the criminal justice system to help tackle reform and rehabilitation. They made me an ambassador for them as well now. So everything I do with my paddleboarding, I do with them in mind as well.
So on your release from prison, that first day of freedom.
Yeah. Straight into lockdown.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I was just going to ask you just again for context around literally straight into lockdown.
Yeah, I think we were 3 weeks into lockdown. So I came straight out into lockdown. And I'll tell you what, though, it was probably the best thing to happen to me.
In what sense?
So when I came out that first time, I was focused on coming out, making the money and getting back to life again. Like my attitude completely changed that second, my second time when I came out. But it gave me that time to just reconnect with my family. So I had to move back with my mum, and it gave me that time to build that broken family unit again. So I managed to build that. I managed to sort of focus on where I've come from, where I'm going, and just take a breather. You know, that's 2 prison sentences. There's 2 years, 8 months you've just done inside in a box. Like, just chill, man. Like, have a breather, embrace life. Like, there's no rush. There's, you know, the whole world is shut down right now. So you can't get a job. You can't do this. So just relax and just sort of just figure it out. Like, just, you know, figure out where you've come from and all those things you told yourself. Just, you know, go back to them and see if they're all true and focus on where you're going next.
So for the benefit of those listening, what's a day in prison look like?
I'll tell you, it's the worst day in prison. So in Winchester prison, it's 23 hours behind your door. If you want to educate yourself, so it's amazing how many people, you know, have got no English skills or math skills or anything like that. So Winchester will put an English class on a maths class. So in the morning, you might be able to go to your maths or English class. But if you want to ring your family or have a shower and, you know, and you be hygienic, you had to pick, do you want to educate yourself or contact your family? And, you know, then that's it. And then that's it. You're locked up again for the rest of the day. And like, it shouldn't be a choice. Like, you should have your education and then maybe in the afternoon, ring your family and go and have a shower. But in Winchester, it's nothing like that. And the screaming, the noise, the violence, the smells, the drug use, it's horrendous. There's a TV show, I think it was on BBC, Time,
right,
with Stephen Graham. Pretty much spot on. There was a bit more than that, which I thought, I wish they did that when I was in prison. But the Time, if you want to see what prison's like, Time is the closest thing that no one's been to prison will see.
Goodness. So back to lockdown. Then you sat there, thought, okay, so we're locking down. I'll work it out. You'd made the, for want of a better phrase, boast or statement whilst you were in prison that when you got out, you were going to, your paddleboarding was going to do. I think 4 longest lakes. You now hold, as I'm right, 7
world records.
7 world records. Stand up. We'll come on to some of those. But at what point did the sort of, you know, the path to that first day on the first lake? What was the journey?
Yeah, so I mean, I was more determined, still determined. I'm going to do these. I made this vow to myself. So it was lockdown. Every morning I'd go running to about 10, 15 miles every day and do a bit of exercise at home. And then eventually Boris Johnson lifted the ban so we could do water sports. I think it must have been about 4 months into my release. And I came down to Poole Harbour, 6 in the morning, and I was the only one out on the harbour, the only paddleboarder for a few hours, and it was amazing. Like,
how long had it been since last you'd paddleboard at that point?
3 years, 3.5 years, I think. And I went out onto the harbour, and it was unbelievable. The weather was beautiful, the sun was shining, like the beaches were untouched. So I went round to Brownsea Island and I was just the only one there. And it's just, it was the most amazing feeling I had. And that's made me more determined to go into these 4 lakes. But it made me realise going out into that water, it's like all those times I've been fantasizing about paddleboarding, being on the water, reconnecting with my old self. In that moment, I realised that my old self is back. That guy that used to love the sports, who used to love the adventure, he's back again. Like, and we're not going to go back to those old ways now. Those old ways are the past, and let's leave them there. Let's now be creating this new future, reconnecting with that guy that used to love that sport and adventure. And that's what I'm doing now.
So first day on the lake, what's the journey to get to that lake? How much training had you had to do? Fundraising? What was the...
Yeah, so I continued my running. I continued paddleboarding as much as I can. I ended up getting a job working for a family company, putting solar panels on roofs. So I put money aside because this time I'm just a nobody. I've come out of prison. Nobody was going to sponsor me financially. However, one company gave me a board, Fat Sticks, who I still work with today. They've just created me a custom board now called the Nomadic Racer. Great brand, local company as well. So they came with me, hired a camper van, went up to Scotland on the 14th of June last year and went to Loch Orr. Never been to the Highlands of Scotland, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen before. I remember getting to the start of Loch Orr, just looking out, and I was thinking, this lake's massive. Like, it is massive.
How big is it?
It was 40 kilometres. But on the map, it looks quite thin. But when you see it in real life, it's wide and long. Like,
so
really
what's that,
long.
25 miles?
About that, yeah. So
okay.
Before that, I did a 50k paddle from Poole Harbour to the Isle of Wight. out onto the Solent carrying a baby oak tree for a charity, which great conditions were perfect for that.
Carrying a baby oak tree.
Baby oak tree, yeah. So I did it for the Prince's Trust, who teamed up with Gone West, who plant trees, and they're trying to get young people into planting trees. So I did it for them and planted the tree on the Isle of Wight, which is, yeah, it was awesome. That was the biggest one I've done. But then when I did Loch Awe, it's just a completely different beast in its own. Like, I was the only one on the lake, and the conditions are just...
So no support team?
No support team.
No.
I try and keep no support team if I can to make it a true adventure. And I remember just paddling down the end, or across the lake, and you could see the mountains up in the highlands, and there's the waterfalls falling, and it's just it was so peaceful, and you can hear these hawks just squawking above you, and just that freedom that I just felt there. Like, considering just a year ago I just walked out of a prison cell, and where I am right now, and this freedom that I was experiencing, there was just, you just can't explain it. You just need to witness it. Like, and I was like, I'm absolutely loving this. Like, and I remember I finished that one, and then got the camper van. I drove to Lake Windermere. The camper van broke down on the way. Didn't get to Lake Windermere till 1 a.m. Woke up on Lake Windermere, not knowing if my camper van's going to be fixed. At 11 o'clock in the morning, we got it fixed. Went to Lake Windermere. I paddled that one. Then headed over to Liverpool to get the ferry over to Northern Ireland. And I remember when I was at Liverpool, I was just talking to this old dear who's from Northern Ireland. And I was telling him, like, I'm going to go and paddleboard Loch Ness. And he said, Loch Ness, this is amazing. Like, yeah, it's a great lake. You got to watch out for these changing weather systems, the waves that roll 9 feet. Oh, yeah. Not so long ago, there's 4 kayakers that disappeared and drowned out there. I've mentally prepared for myself for this lake, but then I met this old deer, who then who scared me again, and was just to give me all the fear of sort of coming back. Anyway, I got in the middle of Loch Ness, and it was the weirdest experience. Right in the middle, like, you can't see land anywhere. It's such a big, it's 43 kilometers from north to south, and I think it was 20 east to west, right in the middle. You just can't see land.
You may as well be at sea.
Yeah, it was. Like, when you paddle out at sea, though, usually you have a coastline to one side and nothing on the other side. Here, there was nothing. And eventually the weather started changing on me, the waves started rolling, and all I remember is this old deer just telling me about these guys that disappeared and these changing weather systems. Luckily, I had all the right equipment on me. I'm a competent paddler, so I thought if anything goes wrong, I'll be all right. Anyway, got to the other end, 3rd world record. I was like, this is amazing.
And what sort of time? When you say what sort of times is that sort of journey take?
So 43 kilometers, I did it in 5 hours 10 minutes.
Goodness.
Which was quick. So I was quite pleased with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so from Loch Ness, we went from to Belfast to get the ferry back, and I remember having a pint of Guinness, and I was just thinking to myself, at that moment in time, I held the most paddleboarding world records by anybody in the world. And he's like, I could stop now. Like, this is amazing. Just doing 3 is a great achievement. But I remember those lads in prison that told me that you'll always be a number, stop daydreaming. I was like, no, I made a vow to myself when I was locked up in that 6x4 prison cell that I'm going to go and paddle 4 lakes in 4 days and set 4 world records. All right, if I don't set the 4 world records, that's fine. But I said 4 days, 4 lakes. And like, I used to always look for an easy way out. That's what got me into trouble. And I'm like, don't think like that anymore. That's the old you. You've come up with an idea. Now go and do it. Like, if you can do it, then do it. So I got on that ferry. I had this fire in my belly, went to Snowdonia for the 4th day and went and did that 4th lake, my 4th world record. And I absolutely smashed the Bala Lake. I did 12 kilometers. I did it in 1 hour 15. And it was just such a beautiful day. And I remember getting to the end, the sun was shining. I got a phone call from the charity I was raising money for, the Alliance of Sport, and they said, "Do you want to be our ambassador?" I was like, "That's amazing." And I just broke down in tears, just pure happiness.
And the contrast between that 6x4 prison cell and the vast expanse of the lakes or the countryside, the Highlands of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Snowdonia. I mean, how do you describe the huge difference that you would have experienced?
I've always liked being outdoors. I've always loved the great outdoors. But going from that prison cell to now being outdoors is just like, I just constantly crave to be in big open spaces.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's some sort of condition where I'm not like claustrophobic. I mean, this is a small room, but I just love being outdoors and having this all massive space around me. I don't know what it is. It just, that's when I feel most alive. And that's when I know who I truly am, like when I'm out in these spaces. But also with these endurance events, when I really push myself, like that's when I know what my body and my mind's truly capable of. And I learn so much about me, and it gives me so many tools to deal with modern day life that I know if I'm going to come into any trouble again off the water, like I got into trouble before, I know I've now got the tools to take control of that and change my life to live a much more meaningful life.
Who did you phone when, accepting that the charity phoned you to ask you to be the ambassador, which must be a great feeling, but who did you phone when you touched the end of that fourth lock, if you like, and you're out of the water? Yeah. Was there a first phone call?
My mum and her partner straight away. Fantastic. Yeah. Then my grandma, and then I got the phone call from my brother, and then all the phone calls started coming in. But it was just, it was amazing. Like, it was the conditions, everything about it was just, absolutely. So
the reason I asked the question is that, if you look at those troubled times, there was a consistent theme of not telling anyone anything. Yeah. But that actually I guess part of that lesson and the learning and the journey is that is sharing experiences and articulating feelings and emotions and, good and bad. Clearly you're articulating and sharing good experiences, good things, or perceived good things, and absolutely they are. Some may argue that's easy to do. Yeah. I'm not suggesting it is. I think if you've come from a place where your default is not to share, actually to have broken that mold and to be able to talk to people about whatever it is that you're going through is all credit to you. But I guess that first phone call with your mum must have been something.
Oh yeah, no, it really was. It was, and it's so nice that my mum would she'll bump into a family member now and she can proudly talk about me now as well. Like, there's no shame about it anymore. Like, yes, we've been to prison, and she can say, oh, he's doing a talk about prison related stuff now. And she'd be proud of me saying that, even though it's, And
how do you feel about that?
It's nice. Like, I know I brought so much shame onto my family and hurt, and it's just nice to be now for them all to be proud. I've got a young niece and nephew who are sort of growing up, and my nephew at the time didn't know I was in prison. We used to tell him I was in Australia, but he now knows I was in prison. So it's now nice that we can start with talking to him about it and, telling him things in life don't always go right, but, people do love you and support you. And, if things do go really bad, this is what can happen to you.
So you've got some big plans now. There are other adventures to come. There are other things. Talk to me about where do you go from here? What's the plan?
Yeah. So I did the 4 longest lakes in the UK, and there's a guy called Nick Butter, I think we spoke about before, didn't we, who ran a marathon in every country in the world. And I was like, well, Nick can run a marathon in every country in the world. Why can I not paddleboard the longest lake in every country in the world? I know certain countries don't have lakes, but we can figure that one out later. So I thought I'd come up with this idea to do Untamed Beasts, which started off with Europe. So in September, I'm going to go and paddleboard the 33 longest lakes in Europe and try and set 33 world records on these lakes in 66 days. But before then, I've done Republic of Ireland. I've managed to tick that one off. I'm off to Iceland in August. I'm doing the Isle of Wight in July. I've done the River Thames and I've done Loch Ness. But after I've done Europe, then I'm hoping to go and do Central America. Then I'm going to go and try and do Asia. And the more I paddle, the more people sort of get interested in my work. We're making a documentary around my Europe trip, which hopefully will then lead on to another series to help me continue my journey, get my message out there, and continue my paddling.
So logistically, that strikes me as, I've read Nick's book, and it's I can put it down as a fascinating. It's more of if I'm honest, it's more of a travel book than it is a running book, although clearly it's a run in some fabulous places. But the thing that struck me was about that story or Nick's story, is that the support that was around him was critical, and there was there were certainly some bumps in the road, significant bumps in the road. But how are you pulling all this together? What sort of resources, support have you got? Do you need? How's it all playing out?
I mean, we're open for any support. Anyone who wants to get involved and help in any way possible. Logistically, it's an absolute nightmare.
I can imagine. Especially coming off, we hear a lot as we sit here today about issues with travel and, COVID is still lurking out there. There's certainly from a European perspective, there's troubled parts of Europe right now, as we've been as well documented. So yeah, there are some challenges, some hurdles to overcome.
Yeah, so we've had to take Croatia out and Russia for obvious reasons. Still obviously dealing with the COVID thing, trying to get around that. And it is just because we're dealing with governments, we're dealing with, visas, we're dealing with trying to filming, because we're filming, we have to get filming permits, all of this. And it is an absolute nightmare. So this little simple idea I came up with, it's not so simple anymore.
It's just become a nomadic beast of its own, right?
That's it, yeah. But I mean, as things are going well for me, my team's behind me is getting slightly bigger. So it's sort of where I used to come up with these ideas and just sort it on my own. I've now got some people behind me, like, just let them deal with that now.
Do you think that's part of the learning? That it strikes me that much of what you've talked about through your earlier life and some of the troubles that you faced, you did them on your own, you dealt with them on your own, or respectfully didn't deal with them on your own, or dealt with them in a way that you felt at the time was the only way?
100%. Like, I used to try and deal with things, I suppose, a lone wolf. I always tried to lone wolf it. And I think what I said earlier, it's just that simple thing, to ask for help. If you need help, I don't know everything in the world, I really don't. And I do need help. There's areas where I need help, and it's nice to have support as well. And it's also when you talk to people, they might have an idea that you never thought about to make your life simpler or something better. And it's just nice to involve more people as well. And it's nice to involve my family in my ideas as well. They think they're all stupid, but it's nice to have them on board. And
nice to prove them wrong, right? When you get them done.
Yeah, I think they're stupid half the time. I'm just like, let's do it anyway. Yeah.
So in terms of the cause, if you like, for which you're doing, are there any particular kind of, are you raising, you mentioned you've raised some money for charities before, are you doing it for any particular, or I mean, you don't need to be, clearly you can just be doing it for your own sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. What's the sort of purpose behind it?
I mean, the main thing for me is it gives me this drive, it gives me this vision. Like, sport and adventures completely transform my life, and I love pushing myself because I learned so much about myself. Like, when I'm at that absolute low on that water, when those demons are niggling, telling me to quit, and I can manage to shut those demons now, that's when I know I've got control of who I am again. That's the number one why I do these things. The other thing is to highlight, what I said, like the importance of reform and rehabilitation, to prove to others that your mistakes don't define who you are. And I want to show others the power of adventure. Like, it doesn't have to be paddleboarding the longest lake in the world. Like, I just want people to reconnect themselves through adventure, like take that little step out of your comfort zone. I gave a talk a while ago, and a woman was asking me, like, she's got a kid, 2 children, a husband, and works a full-time job. How can she do it? I was like, just for a weekend, you and your family go camping, learn to make a fire together. Like, take away all your phones and just go and learn to make a fire by rubbing 2 sticks together or something. That's an adventure. And you're creating core memories as well as a family. And that's what it's all about. That's what life's about, creating happy memories. It's not about chasing money or anything like that. It's just living your most happiest life. But given this platform as well, that I want to give back to some charities. So I'm going to continue to raise money for the Alliance of Sport. Where my dad died before I was born, the RAF Benevolent Fund looked after me and my mother. They paid for my education, which is great. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to give money back to them and raise awareness. And there's a charity called the Adventure Therapy Charity, who I want to help out as well. They're a new, unknown charity, but adventure is my form of therapy. And it is amazing what it's done for me, and it's amazing the work they're doing. So I want to highlight their work and raise money for them as well.
So what is it that drives you, David?
Just to live, just to live a happy life. Like, I just want to learn more about myself. Like, I've become very passionate about life again, and about living it. Like, when I was in London, I look back at it, I was just stuck in this rut. I was stuck in this hamster wheel. I'm now living my best life, and it's taken me to serve 2 prison sentences to do that. So I think, even though they are my biggest failures in life, it turns out they've become my biggest successes in life. And, I'm just happy where I am now. And that's what it's about. I've got my family's back together. I've got an amazing girlfriend. I live down by Bournemouth Beach. 2 years ago, I was sitting in a prison cell, and here I am, like, talking to yourself and giving talks and working for the criminal justice system to try and make it better. And it's amazing. So
that's a really interesting point around the criminal justice system. From what you've experienced and what you see and what you now know, and you've learned from the likes of the inspiration that Sarah has provided, What changes would you make to the system? How would you, I mean, you're talking about a huge overhaul of a system that's been in place for, I suspect probably hasn't changed that much for hundreds of years.
It really hasn't. I am struggling at the moment. This with the Ministry of Justice. I'm struggling with them because I do all this work. I put a great report together. We've had like the Guardian interest. They love what we've done. Sky News comes to those big guys up in the House of Parliament. And he's just, they don't do anything. And I'm starting to lose a little bit of faith there, but I've started doing a lot of youth work now, and that's where I'm really seeing change. So I'm trying to work with the young people of today, me guys and girls that can't deal with mainstream education, maybe going down the wrong path, come from broken families. I've started doing work around that, and I tell you what, that's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. Like, I could quite happily, I think, give up my paddleboarding and just focus on that youth work, because when you see somebody who's been struggling and suddenly, a month later, they're starting engaging more. There's, you see a smile on their face. They're learning more things, they're more open. Like, that's what it's about. And like, that's what I absolutely love. And I'm getting them out paddleboarding, so that's great as well.
And so you mentioned the advice you're giving around, in terms of creating adventure, go build a campfire, sit in a fire. What does adventure mean to you?
When I was inside, I came up with a motto for myself, and it's through adventure we live. Like, life is an adventure, and that's how we should embrace life. Just embrace it as an adventure, live it to the fullest. And that's what, adventure is. It's just about living life to your fullest. Like, it doesn't have to be, as I said, it doesn't have to be paddleboarding. It doesn't have to be going in the woods. Just live life to your fullest. Live life like you're meant to live it. And that's what an adventure is. Like, all the fun stuff will come with that. If you are stuck in a rut, then look at a way to getting out of that. Like, I don't chase money anymore. That's what got me into trouble in life, chasing money. And I'm not fussed about it. Obviously, I've got to pay my bills, but I'm not fussed about chasing the money. And I think I read a quote somewhere. It's like, if you can find your passion and follow your passion, then the money will follow that. You will live a happy life. And that's what it's about, just living a happy life.
So how do you find the tougher times now? Because it is a feature of everyday life. Absolutely, there are for everybody.
Yeah,
life is a roller coaster. It's absolutely true. There are ups and downs. It brings its challenges to us all. So how do you deal with those tougher times? What advice, therefore, might you give someone who's facing some of those tougher times right now?
I think you've just got to take a step back. Like, when you are getting bogged down, I mean, especially with what's going on in life right now, with all these price rises. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's starting to worry me slightly, not to a point when I'm committing crime. I think, all right, I've got to sit down and look at my finances because everything's getting expensive again.
Yeah.
But if you are going down that dark hole, just take that step back. Just have a look at everything. Be mindful of what's going on around you. Ask for the help if you need the help, because people will help. Even if you don't have family or friends, there are people out there, organizations that will help you out in any way. If it is with money problems, drug problems, drink problems, gambling, anything, there is people out there to support you and help you. But I think you've just got to realize where you are, and if you do need that help, I think you've just got to make sure that, first off, you've got to be willing to want the help and change the help. But I think it's just taking that step back and being mindful of what's going on.
I mean, every situation is unique, isn't it? But to your point, I think sometimes either A, perhaps people don't know that the help is available, or that B, they don't know that they need the help. It's actually to go through that voyage. There has to be that recognition from the self, first and foremost, that
I think that's where it all starts.
Something has to change.
Yeah, and I think it's the same with like prison rehabilitation. Like, nobody's going to rehabilitate you. Nobody's going to change your life. And when I said earlier, like, we're the only ones in control of our destiny. But I think a lot of people get quite funny that when somebody says something. So, for instance, if you go to, say, someone who might be an alcoholic, they might be questioning it already. But when people start saying you're drinking too much, they then put their back up a bit more, don't they? And I think that's what a lot of people do get. It doesn't matter anywhere in your life. People sort of do get their back up when somebody else questions it. So I think you just need to be aware of what's going on in your life and just take control of it. Because again, we are the only ones that can control our lives.
So what does success mean to you?
Just being happy. That's what, living your fullest life, your happiest life, and being happy. I think, was it live, love, and laugh? I keep hearing it all the time, and as cheesy it is, I think that's what it's about, isn't it?
I think there's a reason it's cheesy, because it actually is true, right? So I think probably had I have asked you that question 10 years ago,
driving a Ferrari, earning money.
I guess it's it's interesting that there is. I think oftentimes, not for all, perhaps it's a sense of projection, but perhaps as certainly at a young age, we oftentimes find ourselves believing that if you get the money, that's how you become fulfilled, and therefore you become happy. And so there's a number that you need a number for that happiness to feed through.
Yeah.
Actually, yes, to your point, we all need a certain amount because cost of living, and we've got to pay our bills, and we've got to eat, we've got to do all those sorts of things. So money is an important feature of what we need in life, but it doesn't guarantee you happiness.
No.
And to your point around living a fulfilling life, I think what experiences can provide and afford us, and they don't have to be, again, back to money. We perhaps perceive that they have to be in far-flung places, in exotic corners of the world, on expensive holidays, in 5-star hotels, or whatever it might be. Actually, it can be, to your point, paddleboarding on your local river. Actually, something as simple as that. It could be walking in your local forest.
Yeah.
It's just getting out and getting in touch with nature has a huge effect on our well-being.
Yeah, definitely. I think nature has a huge effect on us. I think as well. I mean, paddleboarding is my passion. It's what I love. And, you focus on your passions. And as I said, the money sort of comes. I'm focusing on my passion, and I'm going off across Europe paddleboarding. I never sort of thought it'd get this big. I'm and hopefully I'll go a little bit further. It's but I'm just focused on my paddleboard. I'm not focused on the destinations next, really.
So you mentioned the youth work that you're doing, which my sense is you get some those people, when you see change in those people, positive change in those people, that's inspiring for you. But who or what inspires you?
I mean, there's one man who first off, Sarah inspires me, and the guys I work with and the girls I work with, our whole team inspires me. And it is, if you have those down days, we have a chat group on WhatsApp. We have a down day, you throw a message in, suddenly, there's so much love coming your way. I absolutely love that. And if you need help, it's there. But I mean, there's people in this world. There's a guy called John McAvoy who inspires me. He was a lifer in prison, did 15 years, got a life sentence. The criminal justice system wrote him off. He's now a Nike-sponsored Ironman athlete. He does a lot of youth work himself. He now lives in the Alps, and he's sponsored by Volvo. And if I could just do an eighth of what this man has done, it would be absolutely amazing. But to see him, he's done more serious crimes and offences than I have. To turn his life around like that, then it's mind-blowing that, it's just, I absolutely love it. And there's other people like that who've change their lives around. But there's certain adventurers as well that I actually love, who've just living their best life through adventure, like Leveson Wood, Steve Backshaw, those sort of people. I just watch them and it inspires me. It's yes, I need to get out there, see this world.
So what does the future hold for you?
If I could paddle this world and that be my living, then that would be absolutely amazing. But realistically, I'm doing more and more work for the youth now. We're getting more contracts with Sarah's company. And the paddleboarding seems to be going really well. So I'm sort of really enjoying where it's all going. There's bigger things coming up with the paddleboarding. We've got, I've got some big sponsors starting to get involved now. And I think just ride this wave. I mean, I will keep doing what I'm doing now. If I can keep doing this till I'm 50, and then one day get a little farm with some alpacas, and that would be amazing.
Do you do anything in terms of other sports? Do you still run?
I still run.
You're not on the paddleboard, not on the water. What else are you doing?
No. So, I mean, with what I do with endurance events, my body's fine. I know my body can deal with these. It's your mind that you need to focus on. So every now and again, I might do a 70k run or something. So I did one a couple of months ago just to push my mind to those limits. So I still do a lot of running. I go to the gym, but it's mainly sort of running and paddleboarding now, surfing here and there. But they're the main sports now. And
what about, you mentioned working on the mind. How do you do that? What sort of techniques, practices, things you do to give that mind the exercise and expansion that it needs?
So mindfulness is one thing. So when I did the River Thames, I stayed awake for about 38 hours paddling that before I went to get a couple of hours sleep. And I remember it must have been 3 a.m. I pulled my board out of the water. I was hungry, I was cold, I was starving, I was tired, and I nearly snapped the fin on the board. And I was thinking to myself, if I just snap this myself, nobody's going to know. I can walk away from this, tell the world that it snapped, it was nothing to do with me. And in that moment, I caught that thinking. Again, that's how you used to think. You're still awake, your body's all right, you can continue to do this. So it's just being very mindful of your thinking. So when those demons do come up, like, and they still come up even in my everyday life, you know, you're not worthy, you know, you can't do this. Like, it's just getting them and just shutting them up, getting rid of them, you know, question that you're thinking. And like, it takes a lot of practice to do. And it's taken me to get some really low and dark situations to figure out that. But I can now, anytime that comes up, I can get it and shut it off straight away. And it's such a great thing. If you can train yourself to do that, then yeah, it is good. And it's just with the mindfulness, it's just sitting down and just letting thoughts just come to your head. I think that's where you should start. Just sit in a quiet room and just let your mind go and see what comes up, and then question whatever comes up.
Just take some time out for yourself now.
Yeah,
again.
it is. Yeah. I mean,
I'd imagine it's quite meditative on a board, anyway, isn't it? Particularly for the length of time you're standing on it. But I would imagine that in itself is quite.
Oh yeah, it's a form of meditation.
Yeah.
So when I was in prison, I sort of started going to the Buddhism meetings quite a lot. So I did twice a week for 2 years, 8 months. Really got into my meditation, got into my yoga. I read all these books, and it's just, and what it taught me was absolutely amazing. So it is, even just washing up, you can sort of use it as a form of meditation, walking, anything. Like, it's just, anything can be a form of meditation. It is, again, it is trying to get rid of those thoughts, but it's also good to see what thoughts come so you can challenge them.
Yeah. Do you read now?
Yeah, I try to read. It's just, you know, it's life does get in the way, but now the summer's here, I'm getting on the beach a bit more. I'm picking up books again. I started doing audiobooks, but I just find they don't stick with me because I'm dyslexic as well. So, I mean, audiobooks don't seem to stick in my head. I need to read something to really stick in there.
So if you reflect back, what advice might you give your 21-year-old self?
Don't be an idiot. Just, you know, just being open and honest. Like, just be open and honest, and don't be a proud man, you know? I think a proud man, the definition of proud is asking for help, you know? That is what a proud person is, and asking for help and just using that support. I think that's what it's all come down to. I wish I utilised it more so I didn't go down that path.
I think to your point, being proud, the perception is asking for help is a weakness.
It is.
In some way, shape or form.
But it's not.
It's not. It's just, it takes great strength to ask for help. But I wonder how much of that message, how much of that message really gets across or is believed, and how we've created this sense that, because I think that perhaps I'd be interested in your view working with younger people, whether are those younger people, is that sense of asking for help considered a weakness amongst those younger people with whom you're talking to?
It is. I think
is it still, even now? I'm thinking it, when I was a child, it would have been. Asking for help was, so I don't know if it's uniquely male. I think
a lot of it comes down to a male thing.
Do you?
I don't know, you know, what women would say on this.
We need a woman in the room to offer a perspective on it, don't we?
But with the children, the young people, like, I can see that they're asking for help. They're not directly asking for it, but I can see it. So when you do offer the help or support or anything, you know, they don't see it as them that's asked you. You just spotted it. But I think it just takes a lot for somebody to realise that, you know, you need to ask for help. So when I read all these self-help books, or, you know, all these self-made people, like, there's a point in their life they've always had to ask for the help to then become who they are. And, like, I think it just takes a lot for someone to realise that, yeah, you know, you do need help, you should ask for it. But, you know, you need to listen to these podcasts and read these books to realise that, asking for help is such a simple act, and it can change your life.
Absolutely. So where can people go to find out more?
At the moment, probably the best place if they want to find out more is on my Instagram at Nomadic Paddler. I've got Twitter as well at Nomadic Paddler. My website's just been redone at the moment, but hopefully that can be in full swing. But Instagram's probably the best bet. And if anyone wants to reach me, that's where they can reach me as well. Fantastic.
David, it's a fascinating story that I could talk about for hours because I think you've clearly been on an incredibly challenging journey. You don't need my endorsement for the way that you've turned your life around, but all credit to you.
Thank you.
It's a story that needs to be told, and I think would offer a lot of hope to a lot of people who perhaps, for whatever their circumstances might be, whatever dark times they might be facing, you know, you offer much by way of inspiration and proof that you can affect change, you can turn things around with a will and and a willingness to ask for help and recognise that it's there. So I wish you well in your future endeavours. Really appreciate you taking the time out today to come and talk to us
I
about
appreciate it.
the life that you've had and the challenges you've overcome, and look forward to seeing you on a board.
I have to get you out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to get you on a board. Get me on a board. I don't know that I'd have the capacity for some of the travelling that you're doing, but I think it's a wonderful thing that you're up to. So
Cool,
I wish you all the very best, every success.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Great stuff. Thanks, David. All the best to you.
Cheers.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to today's Extrology podcast. I really appreciate your audience and ears. If you've enjoyed it, then why not hop onto iTunes and give us a review? I'd really appreciate anything that you might have to say. Any feedback always gratefully received, and look forward to hosting you next time. See you soon. Just a reminder, today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners. Visit www.progressotalent.com today for more information.